Welcome to the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, Associate Editor Mark Demko.
So, hey, everybody, welcome to the Bowhunting Podcast. You know, every year in the archery and the bow hunting industry, you know, there's dozens, if not hundreds of new products that come out. But every once in a while, there are some products that are so unique or different that they really make you stop and go, or it's like, man, I never thought of that. You know, case in point, a couple of years ago, some of the crossbows that came out, it was a bow that was shooting 500 feet a second. There was another one that could shoot 2 shots. Well, this year, Paradigm, through its Covert Optics line, has come up with an incredible array of products, thermal optics. And, you know, a lot of people may think, well, you know, it's not something I would have thought of for bow hunting, whether hunting with a bow or hunting with a crossbow. But we're very excited. We have Lucas Johnson from Paradigm today. Lucas, welcome to the Bow Hunting Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. Now, you and I actually met on a hunt in Texas last spring. I want to say it was May or something like that. And you had sort of teased out this new Covert Optics line as you were talking about some of the new things that will be coming out, not only in 2021, but 22 and beyond. So excited to have you on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, we're going to dive into these new products in just a second. But, you know, people know Covert for the excellent trail cameras you make. But now you have the Covert Optics line. Talk a little bit about where the concept came for developing optics line in the Paradigm family, and how long you've been working on that.
Yeah, so the biggest thing we look for at Paradigm is innovative ways to kind of fit a new consumer need. When we were looking at optics and thermals as a whole, we didn't really see much of an archery focus. So both the binos we came out with as well as the thermals, we felt like the archer had kind of been left behind in that market. So we wanted to come up with things that were, you know, compact, lightweight, and durable, whether it's spot and stock hunting or up in a tree stand. You know, it's going to be out of the way when you're drawing your bow, but also high quality, affordable optics. So over the course of the last, you know, year and a half prior to the launch, we started working with a team to develop these optics, and we're really excited with how they turned out.
Now, where are these optics made? Are they all made in the U.S.? Or are they coming from different parts of the world?
So all of the thermal optics are actually made over in California. They're made right here in the U.S. Our binos do get assembled overseas and then shipped here.
Yeah, perfect. So, you know, you touched on this very briefly here, but, you know, the thing that really got our attention was that these are really products that are geared towards the bow hunter. So when you think of thermal optics, I mean, the first thing I thought of when I first saw the new line being rolled out was, okay, these are great if you're doing some hog hunting or some predator hunting at night, but and we'll talk about this a little bit, but there are also some practical applications for bow hunters, from scouting to game retrieval and things like that. But before we dive into all that, why don't you do a bit of a run through, tell us what you have as far as the products that you're rolling out this year in the Covert Optics line.
Yeah, so we have 2 categories within Covert Optics. We have our daytime optics, which is a 8x42 and a 10x42 binocular that are going to be an excellent clarity and really excel in those low light situations. And then on the thermal side, we already have launched our handheld thermal scanner as well as our thermal laser rangefinder, which also doubles as a bow sight. And as we're moving into late this year into next year, we're also launching a thermal scope.
Perfect. You know, and that's a great way to start. Let's talk a little bit about that rangefinder. It's called the TRF, the Thermax TRF. I had a chance to test that earlier in the spring. It's an incredible product. Tried it out with my crossbow, but you call it a rangefinder, but it actually has a lot of different functions and capabilities, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we kind of call it our do-all optic in the thermal line. It can be used as a handheld scanner looking for game. It can be used as your thermal laser rangefinder, but also as a sight on both a bow or a crossbow, depending on what your weapon of choice is. So we have custom mounting brackets for that, and there are 4 different programmable reticles. Each pin, as we call it on the screen, can be moved individually to help sight in. And throughout that development process, the biggest thing we found was difficulty with the third axis when sighting this in on a vertical bow. So what we did was we went in and added a physical laser pointer that can, for legal purposes, only be turned on when it's in the setup mode, but it'll really help you when you're looking at the target, see, okay, my pin's on the target, but is my third axis on? Because that was the toughest thing we found. So we did find a way to fix that to really make the user experience pretty easy and simple to set up.
Yeah, no, and I tested that out on my crossbow, and there's a couple of things that I found that I really liked. You have a variety of different color palettes, so you can adjust it for the ambient conditions, for the lighting, for the temperature, and things like that. You also had a really great refresh rate as far as refreshing of the sensor and of the screen. I should mention, you pointed out about the laser pointer. It's important that you check with your state's fish and game agency to make sure these are legal. These are so new that you want to make sure that you can use them in the applications you're interested in. Usually for predator hunting, that may not be an issue, but if you can use it for deer hunting, you want to make sure you just double check the rules and regulations. But walk through some of those features on this rangefinder. We touched on them briefly, but like I said, I tested out and I was pretty impressed with what you've come up with in a compact rangefinder that you can use as a handheld. You can mount it to a sight via mounting bracket for your bow or your crossbow. But let's get in a little bit into the nitty gritty of how you put that model together.
Okay. Yeah, and like you touched on a little bit there, we really wanted it to be customizable to any situation that they're in. So there's 4 different color palettes depending on whether you're using this during the day or at night, as well as a adjustable brightness, so that you can optimize the picture for any situation. Another feature obviously is the range finding itself. A lot of thermal optics that you had seen in the past had a form of range finding, whether it was, showing images on the screen of how big a deer would look at these distances, or 2 different lines to give you an understanding of how far it is. Whereas this is going to work just as your regular daytime laser rangefinder does. You're going to hit the button, it'll send a laser out, it'll come back to the unit, and it'll tell you exactly how far away that is.
Yeah, and obviously, a good practical situation would be in first light or right before dark. It's just, those last few minutes of light, and I've really learned as I've gotten older, can be tougher to see. But it would be a good thing to see if you want to scan and see what's around you, whether you're in the tree or if you want to maybe check out the field as you're heading into your stand, so you don't blow the deer out of the field and things like that. But so it has a lot of applications as far as using it. Now, have you had a chance to hunt with this at all yet?
I have. I was lucky enough to use this over the course of the last year. And with the laser rangefinder itself, the biggest benefit we saw using it as a sight was actually in hog hunting. Oftentimes when you see them hunted with a rifle, you shoot once and they all start running. Well, when you're using it with either a crossbow or a vertical bow, you're able to shoot, and the whole group of pigs doesn't freak out. They're not really sure what happened. So oftentimes you can get more shots off at a standing still group of animals when you're using an archery setup for hogs.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you could set this up for a single pin setup for a bow or a crossbow. You also have the axe crossbow line. You have the 405 and the 440. A great bow. I shoot the 405. You have a special setup that works with your crossbows as well. Tell us how that all comes together.
Yeah, so we have 2 bows in the axe line, and we really wanted to cater, these optics with that bow, since they're both, high-end products. And so when you're going through your programmable reticles on the unit, you have the single pin, like you said. You also have a multi-pin for a vertical bow setup. But then the last 2 are already pre-programmed for our Axe 405 and our Axe 440. So depending on which bow you have in your situation with the 405, if you went to reticle set 3 and put it on the bow, it would already be as close to sighted in as you can get across the board. You may have to adjust it a little bit, but for the most part, they'll already be pretty synced up.
Yeah, and obviously you're gonna have to tinker with it on the range or at your backyard if you're shooting. But I thought it worked incredibly well. I was excited when we had a chance to test it. And if you don't mind, what's the MSRP on that? What's the price on that? And is that available now? If somebody is interested, we have a lot of people who listen to this program. If somebody wants to check that out, is that available now as well as the handheld scanner?
Yep. So the rangefinder retails right at $2,500, $2,499, and the scanner is going to be right at $999. And we are shipping both of those now.
Yeah. No, let's jump into the handheld scanner a little bit. Tell us about that. and then also how you feel that fitting into the bow hunting world, what people might be using that for and things like that. That's obviously at a different price point, but it has a lot of practical applications.
Hmm. Yeah. So the biggest thing is, well, I guess the biggest difference is going to be there's no rangefinder on this one. It is a little bit smaller unit, but it's going to have the base or the same basic features and functions. It has the same 4 color palettes, the same brightness adjustment, and also a programmable reticle, whether you just want something to help you, point at where you're looking, but it also can be weapons mounted to a crossbow with a 30 millimeter sight ring. It does have that weapons mounted capability. Now, the biggest practical use for this unit, I think, is mostly in game recovery. We kind of refer to it as the tracking dog in your pocket because it's a very compact unit. But when you're out walking in the woods, you may not always see that deer tucked next to a log or in a bunch of brush. If you have this with you, you can hold it out in front and scan as you're walking, and you might be able to pick up that heat signature you may not have otherwise seen with the naked eye.
Yeah, and you've had a chance to try it out in that aspect, maybe where you were hog hunting or something like that. Have you had a chance to use that one as well?
Yep. So I've used it in both daytime and nighttime situations. For the nighttime application, it's super convenient that if you shoot a hog or a coyote or something, you don't have to turn on a bunch of spotlights to go find the animal. You don't have to bring your weapon with you and look through the sight to try and find them. You can have this unit in your pocket and walk out there and quickly scan out in front of you and go find it without spooking, other game in the area. And then in daytime situations, again, it was tracking a deer. Took it with, just hung it around our neck on a lanyard, and we were able to see an ear sticking up over a log that we probably wouldn't have caught just walking by.
Yeah, no. Now, you've obviously used both of these items. When you had a chance to first test them, and I'm sure you were probably involved in some capacity with the development of them, but when you first used them in applications in the field, what was the thing that surprised you or stood out the most?
I think it was the image quality. In my past experience, I hadn't really used, high quality optics in the past. As a college kid, you're kind of taking what you can get. And so to be able to have this compact unit and really see fine details out in the woods was pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned that you have a thermal scope that is going to be coming out later this year, or maybe if I heard you correctly, the beginning of next year. But that's like the third part of the trio here as far as your new thermal optics line. Let's talk a little bit about that thermal scope. I think that's the TS1.
That's correct. Yeah, that one we're super excited about this. It has a really unique feature in optical magnification. So a lot of times in the thermal world, you have digital magnification, and the drawback there is going to be each time you magnify that image digitally, it cuts the pixels in half, which essentially cuts your image quality in half. With the 8-power optical magnification on this scope, you'll be able to zoom up to 8 power without any sort of image degradation that you may see in other scopes.
So you're saying that the resolution or the clarity should be pretty good. You're not going to have a lot of really bad imagery as you're maneuvering the scope or manipulating the magnification.
Yeah, so it'll come as a native power of 3x, and you'll be able to magnify it all the way out to 8x magnification. And throughout that process, the image quality will stay the same.
Yeah. Now, obviously, when you think of scopes, you think of using them on firearms. In this case, we're talking about these were designed specifically with bow hunting or crossbow hunting applications in mind. I was just curious, will this scope work on both, or is it just specifically for crossbows?
This will work on both crossbows as well as firearms. It won't be able to be used with a vertical bow, but with crossbows and firearms, both, it'll work perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, and when you get into some of the nitty gritty, we talked a little bit about the magnification and the clarity. Tell us a little bit about the sensor and the refresh rate and things like that. Does it have the same kind of color palette as maybe the rangefinder might have?
Yep. So it's going to have the same color palettes again and brightness adjustments. We have that in the line across the board. And to help keep these units compact with the Archer in mind, we used a micro thermal core that helped us keep the unit smaller as well as, lightweight, but really we were still able to keep that same image quality in thermal applications.
Now, what are the dimensions of that scope? When you think of scopes, they can be pretty long or they can be pretty compact. What are the dimensions of that scope, and what does it weigh, or what are you expecting it to weigh when it comes out?
It's gonna come in at about 7 inches long, and it's gonna be about a pound. It's not gonna be too heavy. You're not really gonna notice it on the scope, or excuse me, on the crossbow. But it does have a very compact, and I think it looks, from an aesthetic standpoint, it has a pretty slick design as well.
And is that going to be pretty easy to establish on your crossbow, just like the rangefinder is? Are you going to have different settings, or is that going to be more manual adjustments and things like that?
So from actually getting it on the crossbow, it will come with a built-in quick detach mount. So any tack rail that, for the most part, all crossbows come with, you'll be able to clip it right into place. And then it does have a couple adjustable features for the reticles, whether that be a single reticle, multi, but it'll also have a picture-in-picture feature like you see on those long-range scopes, where you can see the reticle here, and then up at the top of the screen there will also be a further zoomed in digital image of where that reticle is actually pointed.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if have you had a chance to hunt with this scope yet, or is it still in the production phases? Or I know you've been working on this for quite a while, so I didn't know if you had a chance to maybe test out a couple of the prototypes on a hunt.
I've been able to use it for its scanning function. I personally have not used it on a weapon just yet, but I know that the people that have been pretty impressed.
Yeah. Now, again, I want to let everybody who's listening to the podcast know, obviously, these are so new. You want to make sure that you check out with your Fish and Wildlife Agency in your state what applications you can use these for. But, certainly we're talking a bit about hog hunting, predator hunting, whether you hunt for coyotes or foxes, a lot of great applications. You may be able to use them in other instances as well. But has maybe any of your pro staff or anybody on the Faradyne staff use this for anything? Say, if you've been hunting for anything else, such as maybe deer, or maybe when you were in Texas, did anybody try them out on any of the ranches down there for exotic game or anything like that? Has anybody tried them in those type of situations?
Yep. So we've done a couple of exotic hunts with them, and some of my coworkers have been able to harvest black bucks as well as aoudad. We haven't had anybody find a place where it's legal to shoot whitetail deer with them on a weapon. That's mostly been the game recovery feature. But we have been able to use them in both daytime and nighttime settings.
Yeah, and I have to mention, you talked a couple times about using it for the game recovery, and the handheld scanner and the rangefinder are both really small and compact. You touched on that very early on in our conversation. Easily slip into your pocket or a pack pocket. Very, very lightweight, very comfortable to use. And I do want to mention with that, if I remember correctly, with that rangefinder, it's very easy to operate with just a couple buttons on the top of it.
Yep, that'll be all of our optics that we have thus far. They all have a 3-button user interface. Makes it simple. There's not, 15 buttons all over the scope or the rangefinder. And we make it, simple startup guide that takes you through, if you hold this one, it'll take you to the menu. If you click this one, it'll change the color, and etc. So it's a simple user interface, and I find it pretty easy to use.
Yeah. Now, as you're rolling these out, what are you hearing from the community, like from maybe predator hunters, hog hunters? Are people excited about these?
Yeah, people are, it's a new market, the thermal archer. So it's taken some time for people to really get a hold of, all the capabilities that they have. But those who have been able to use them and get their hands on some have been really impressed.
Yeah, awesome. Now, we may be jumping the gun here, but as you work on this Covert Optics line, you mentioned you have the high quality, crystal clear optics for the binoculars. You have these thermal products. Are you thinking about anything else down the road that you could maybe tease or tell us about? Or is your focus right now on getting these in the hands of the hunters and the bow hunters who are interested in them, and making sure that you have the best product line out there right now?
Yeah, so we're kind of approaching that in two lanes here. Really, like you stated, we're trying to get the word out about these, the thermal archer as well as a high quality bino. But we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we need to round out this line. There are a lot of products that we can bring to market that would fit more consumer needs. So We're working on developing a few more items right now, as well as, listening to customer feedback on the items that we have and maybe areas where we're missing something so that we can really build this into an archery focus optic line.
No, awesome. And I should mention, if you want to learn more about the Covert Optics line, go to Feradyne.com. That's Feradyne, Feradyne.com. And the Feradyne family has a tremendous line of products. Just to mention a few, they have Muzzy, they have Carbon Express arrows. We talked about the Axe crossbows, and obviously the Covert cameras and the Covert Optics line. But before we talk about some of the other new things in the Covert family, you and I met last year, as I mentioned, but you obviously are pretty passionate about hunting and archery hunting. What are your favorite things to hunt? Where have you had a chance to travel since you've been with Feradyne? What are some of the things you've done as far as your bow hunting?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, so I have a little bit of an addiction to whitetail hunting, but been lucky enough with Feradyne to, go do some spot and stalk elk hunting. Been obviously with you down to Texas for some exotics, which was something completely new to me, as well as deer hunting in other states, Minnesota, Kentucky. I've been doing some coyote and hog hunting now that we have the thermals. So it's provided me a lot of really great opportunities to not only work in something I'm passionate about, but also be able to experience it.
Yeah, and I think when you think of the Feradyne products, the original Covert were the Covert cameras. You have the trail cameras, and not to put you on the spot here because we weren't going to talk about this, but you're always unveiling some new cameras in your line. What does Covert trail cameras have new for this year?
Yeah, so we have 3 new cameras this year, 2 on the wireless side that really help us kind of round out the wireless camera line as a whole. The first one being our WC20. It's going to be our entry level camera. It's taking super high quality images, has the same app communication that everybody's come to love with Covert, and it's a really affordable unit, which is not something Covert has had historically. Then to complement that, we also launched a new high-end model this year, the Code Black Select. That's playing on our Code Black and Black Hawk models from years past that have kind of been the flagship units for Covert. What we did this year was combine them into one. It just gives the consumer the option to choose whether they're using a Verizon or an AT&T network, but it also is jam-packed with features like 4K video, GPS, real-time photos, as well as all the other app communications. And then we have one last new camera this year that's going to be the MP30. That's on the non-wireless side. And so that uses the same housing as our MP16 camera. That's always been our most, our favorite of customers for our non-wireless side. And so it hadn't kind of gotten a makeover in quite some time. So what we did this year was use the same housing and really just improved both the megapixels, the internal display screen size, as well as our video up to 4K.
Yeah, now some of the features of cameras that bow hunters might be interested in. Let's talk a little bit about, at least on the high end model and MP30, the trigger speeds as far as and the flash range and things like that. Where do those fall on ththose cameras?
Yeah, so across the board with our cameras, we try to get to at least, an 80 to 100 foot flash range so that if you're putting it over a clover field or a food plot, you have the ability to catch them when they're maybe walking on the far side. And over the last few years, we've really worked on kind of optimizing both the trigger speed and the field of view, as well as the field of detection. Something we had seen in the past was maybe the trigger speed was faster than the field of view could capture. So you were getting pictures of noses or tails of deer either entering or leaving the screen. So really what we focused on this year was not only a fast trigger speed, but optimizing that angle of view so that when you're getting that image of a deer, it's most likely going to be in the middle of the image.
That's a really good point because there's a lot of great cameras out in the market, but I have several cameras that have fast trigger speed, but they're capturing the very front of that deer or the very tail of the deer. And so that's an interesting point you bring up, and that's a great feature that people are really going to love. And obviously, I'm guessing the cameras work on both the AT&T and Verizon networks.
That's correct.
Yeah. Now, are those out now, or are they coming out?
Yep. No, we are shipping all 3 of those new products this year right now. So you can get them either in stores or at our website that you mentioned, Feradyne.com.
And what's the price range on those, or what's the range of the 3 different cameras?
Yeah, so the MP30, that's going to be right at $99.99. We also offer that in a combo pack with batteries and SD cards for $139. Then we have the WC20, which is right at $130, $129.99. And then the Code Black Select is going to be right at $250.
Awesome. Now we're sitting here. For anybody who's listening, we're right in the middle of summer. We're in the dog days of summer here in the third week of July as this airs. But I got to ask you, where are you planning on hunting, or what are you planning hunting this fall bow hunting, whether with your bow, with your crossbow? What are you looking forward to doing come September, October, November?
Yeah, so the two biggest things that I have planned right now are both whitetail hunts. Was lucky enough to draw a Kansas tag this year, so I'm going to go end of October out there and, have my first trip to Kansas, which I'm pretty excited about. I hope to get back down to Kentucky whitetail hunting again this year, but now that I'm back in Wisconsin, I've never really focused on trying to do some public land hunting. And so I think this fall, especially early, I'm going to really, try my hand at finding a good buck on public land here in Wisconsin.
Now, I have to ask you, we're going to go off topic a little bit. I was out to Buffalo County, which is probably your most renowned county for deer hunting in the state last fall. It was an incredible experience. I always say, and as a matter of fact, it's interesting to me, when I first started bow hunting back in the late 80s and early 90s, Wisconsin was the first state that I ever thought of whitetail hunting outside of Pennsylvania, just because I knew you had such a rich history and tradition up there. And so I had a chance to go there last year. It was pretty exciting to knock something off my bucket list. I didn't get a deer. I had a big one come by. I just couldn't get a shot at it. And but you mentioned trying to do some public land hunting. I live here in Pennsylvania. We have a lot of public land as far as acreage. How's your public land system out there from what you know? And I'm guessing you hunted mostly private land, but you're looking to tackle the DIY public land angle this year?
Yeah, growing up in southern Wisconsin, we've always had friends that are farmers that had plenty of land to hunt, as well as good family friends that always offered the opportunity for us to hunt with them. But the public land system here is, it takes a little bit of e-scouting on the computer to, find good tracts of land. But I found some pretty big parcels up here in, north central Wisconsin that I'm pretty excited to be able to go hike around and check out and, find out if I can find any deer sign or, a good oak flat to set up on. But overall, now that I've researched it a little bit, pretty impressed with the amount of public opportunities there are in Wisconsin.
And I've got to ask you, are those fairly close to your home? Are you talking about an hour drive? Or are you talking about a 3-hour drive?
Yeah, no, there's some parcels that are pretty close, within a half hour. But depending on where you are in the state, it may be a little bit longer drive. If you're closer to the Madison area, bigger cities, you're going to have a little bit further drive. I'm a little bit more rural over here in Eau Claire, but it's for the most part not an undoable thing. I'll say you can make the drive.
Yeah. Well, I wish you luck when you get out this fall. Hopefully you'll get a brute when you go to Kansas. And hopefully you have some good success if you check out those public parcels in your home state. But let's bring this back home. So you have the brand new Covert Optics line that you brought out there. Sure. You have high quality binoculars, great optics. You also have the thermal line with the rangefinder, the thermal scope, and the handheld scanner. The scanner and the rangefinder are out now. And that rangefinder is built to specifically for bow hunting applications. So you can use it on your bow or your crossbow, obviously, predator hunting, hog hunting. And then later this year, early next year, you can have that thermal scope come out. Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as that new Covert Optics line that you're rolling out this year and early next year?
I think the biggest thing is, getting out to your local retailers and taking a look through all these optics. I think that, like I said, it's kind of a new market, but once consumers get them in their hands, I think they're going to be really impressed with how they turned out.
Awesome. And yes, absolutely. You're listening to the podcast. If you're interested in what we're talking about today with this new thermal optics line, and I should mention, and I don't think we touched on this, your rangefinder, am I correct? That's the first thermal optics rangefinder for bows ever?
Correct.
Yeah. So these are really unique products, brand new for this year. You can't check them out. Like Lucas said, you visit your local retail or your local archery shop, I'm sure you're going to start seeing them pop up in there, or you can go on the Faradyne website. But if you're a passionate predator hunter, hog hunter, or you want to just try something different as far as archery hunting for predators or hogs, make sure you check out the Covert Optics line on the Faradyne website. That's all we have for you today. But Lucas, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck when you get out this fall. And thanks everybody for tuning into the Bowhunting Podcast.
Thanks for downloading the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bowhunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Petersen's Bowhunting magazine on your local newsstand. Or connect with us online at bowhuntingmag.com.